Hello and welcome everyone to our today's live video podcast here on LinkedIn and YouTube. We will talk about how to become a master of disaster recovery in Jira. And with me today is Greg from GitProtect. I'm really looking forward to this conversation, and I will bring him on stage. Hello, Greg.
Hello, Jan. Hello, everyone. I'm
How are
doing
you?
well. I'm well. It's so great to be here with all of you. And I'll more than happy to have a chat with you, Jan.
Awesome. Where are you right now? And maybe can you introduce yourself real quick?
Sure thing, sure thing. So my name is Greg. I'm pre-sales engineer at a company called Zopro, which is taking care of data security and backups and disaster recovery for various types of data, including DevOps ecosystems. And I'm joining you from the sunny city of Krakow in the southern part of Poland.
Awesome. So the weather is good.
Weather is good, certainly.
Perfect. Yeah, especially in Hamburg, it's also like pretty great right now. So it's I really enjoy that. So what inspired you to work for Xpero GitProtect and in the realm of disaster recovery? What brought you here?
Sure. So the thing that gives me the most pleasure in my work is always connecting the dots. And I know it sounds a little bit cliche, but I love hearing about the challenges that the companies are having and finding just the right solution for them that's optimized for their needs. And I believe that the cybersecurity space for overall is the next level of it, because you are helping companies to understand challenges that they're having, even if they are not aware of it, and then help them to learn what is the best solution for them. And I think that Zopro has exactly the same mindset of working with their customers. That's why I joined it.
Awesome. So what's something our listeners might not know about you and
Oh,
definitely should?
so I'm a huge nerd outside of work, and I'm especially a huge fan of so-called miniature war games. Those are those games that require from you assembling your models, painting them, and then you can play with them. This is
Okay.
something that helps me a lot in learning the patience, especially for chats with customers. But it also helps me strategic thinking and just connecting the dots mindset.
Perfect. Great. So is there anything you would like to talk about in today's episode?
Yeah, I'm especially looking forward to having a conversation about why you should back up Jira in the first place. Because from my perspective, this is something that many people are a little bit aware of, but they don't have this in-depth understanding, especially of recommendations that Atlassian itself is sharing with the user. So that's a part I'm especially looking forward to.
Awesome. So before we dive a bit deeper into disaster recovery, can you explain what is the actual difference between backup and restore and disaster recovery? Is it the same thing? Is it different? Can you explain it a bit?
Sure, sure. So the way I see it, backup and restore is a part of disaster recovery. Backup and restore is like knowing a couple of exercises in a gym when you want to get the best shape of your life. And disaster recovery plan is where you're trying to be in the best shape of your life, but with the help of personal trainer, the dietitian, physiotherapist, and you have long-term plan how to do it. Like
Okay.
having particular tools in your toolbox can be helpful in achieving the goal. And in some cases, it will help, but not for everybody, unless you have the full plan tailored to your needs that has been analyzed and prepared especially for your needs. Disaster recovery is personalized for the company and personalized for what they need.
Awesome. Now that we're talking about gym, so what are the major trends you're seeing in disaster recovery industry? Is it back and butt, or is it chest and legs? How has the nature of disasters changed in the recent year even?
So so when we are thinking about disaster recovery, coming back even to the 90s or early 21st century, we're mainly thinking about those catastrophic outages, about fire in our data center, fire in the office, being flooded, power outages, because those things were more realistic for us. And many old school CISOs, Chief Information Security Officers, who are preparing such disaster recovery plan, are typically well prepared and we have extensive knowledge what to do in case our office is flooded, what to do in case of power outage. However, in the modern reality, we are not flooded every week, or we don't have fire every Tuesday, but there are
Hopefully.
other risks that, luckily, but there are more risks that are more prevailing, like, for example, ransomware. And we are seeing that the more people are using certain tools, there is a bigger interest from hackers in how to find vulnerability in those platforms and how to exploit them. This gets to the level that even the safest platform there is on the market, with fast-paced growth, with platforms that are adding tons of new features every year, like Atlassian does, there's always a slim chance that there will something that will slip the best QA. And then those hackers are in hand for exploiting those because they know that those are the tools used by the biggest companies.
Okay. And what new types of threats should organizations be prepared for?
So firstly, we have ransomware attacks that are fully automated. One of the trends that we are always talking about these days is AI and machine learning and how it can revolutionize our work in terms of automation of things. However, we don't realize that the same tools for automation are also available for malicious actors. And many companies think, okay, I'm not on the Fortune 500 list, I'm not the biggest one in the industry. We are like mid-sized company, or we are rapidly growing company. We are not the first target for the companies. Nobody's going to do dedicated, targeted attack on us. And while that's true, with the AI and machine learning coming to the table, it's extremely easy to have large-scale automated attack, which is not targeted at anyone in particular, just like shooting blindly, and we'll see what will catch. So I think that's one of the biggest risks. And also, I believe that, all the challenges related to social engineering and social techniques are especially important to be aware of these days, because, the human factor is always, the weakest link in the whole security segment. And, I believe that, with the focus on how we can prevent machine learning and AI as a risk, on the other side of the board, we will start neglecting how to prevent social engineering attacks. Especially that, nowadays we have also great tools to automate such attacks as well. It's no longer phishing email, which looks terrible, because with the AI and machine learning, we are able to generate email exactly in the style that our CEO is sending. We can even generate a sample of voice of our team leader. So such attacks can be way more complex and way more difficult to detect for somebody who is not actively in a lookout for those.
Cool. So you mentioned actually a really important thing. We are not part of the Forbes 500 list, right? We're a small company. But so what we see, especially in the finance area, that new regulations will come up 2025 with DORA. NIS2 already more or less is there, or will come by the end of the year. How are changing regulations affecting disaster recovery practices across different industries, and especially those little companies that first thought, well, we will not be affected, right? We don't need something like that.
Sure. So this is quite a big topic, and it will be difficult to summarize it in a couple of words. But there is one thing which is the most important in the context of our conversation today. DORA, so Digital Operational Resilience Act, is making mandatory for the financial industry to have some sort of disaster recovery plan in place, both for disaster risk reduction, but also for being able to have to restore your data and having this disaster recovery strategy in place. So that's an important thing. And it also puts a requirement on companies on testing the backup solutions that they're having. So it's not only about having the backup one and done and forgetting about them, but companies can expect that at some point during the next audit, you will be checked if your backups are actually working, not if you're just having them. NIS2, from the perspective of disaster recovery is a little bit more general because it's more about the cybersecurity adoption overall. However, we are coming to, for example, to the part when we are looking at risk management, which is a huge part of NIS2. And typically, when you've done your risk assessment properly, you're halfway done with your disaster recovery plan. So as the company is implementing NIS2, and the time is short, deadline is on October 17th. With that, the companies are actually feeling more and more pressure to finalize this, and it might be a good time to implement proper disaster recovery plan at the same time.
That's actually a good point. So that was actually my last question before I think you had prepared a presentation, and I'm just keeping you from sharing it. But when creating a disaster recovery plan, what are some crucial pieces you need to consider, or if you don't even have one, where do you get started?
So many people think that thinking about disaster recovery plan is about the IT infrastructure or our IT department, and this is something that the tech guys should figure out. It couldn't be more wrong. Actually, the first consideration should be your business side. What is your economic driver, and how do you make money as a business, and which tools are helping you effectively to make the money nowadays, and how long you can keep your business up and running without those tools.
Typical. I try to go to the server room and I pull all the cables and see first what is going on and how long can people survive without a Jira or a GitHub.
Maybe in not that drastic way, but this is actually a valid point that we're actually asking the companies when, for example, somebody is asking us, okay, what should be perfect restore time for our infrastructure? The perfect restore time is as short as possible. It should be 1 minute, but obviously no system can be restored within 1 minute. But the question is, how long can you actually live without it before you start losing money, or you've lost that much money that your business is fully disrupted? This can be loss of direct business. This might be loss because your team is not able to work efficiently, or it's not able to work at all. When I speak with some IT industry leaders, like some CTOs, typically when I asking them, what would you do with your developers if your GitHub is out? And they say, we would give them a day off. Or if your Jira is out for the support team, what would you do? We're going to switch to email, but I'm going to send a couple of people on a time off if your company is using Jira Service Management. And then, the question is, okay, but how much does it cost you to send those people on a paid leave unexpectedly?
Yep. Cool. So I will bring your presentation to the stage, and then the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much. So when it comes to the topic of the Jira backup specifically, because that's our focus point for today, typically when we are getting into this point, I see that lots of people find this topic boring. Like, why do I need to back up my Jira in the first place? Why is the topic of backup that important? And before we get into technicalities of it, I want to share a small personal story. Because my sister, who is a lawyer by trade, has been always pushing one quote into my mind. This quote in Latin is "Si vis pacem, para bellum," which can be translated to "If you want peace, prepare for war." And she was pushing it into my head when thinking about signing contract with somebody. You're not actually signing it for times when you perfectly get along with that other person, or you perfectly get along with a company. But for the times when you're actually in dispute with them. And I think this is the same mindset that we should apply to thinking about backup. I wish all my customers that they never really need to use the backup, that they are making the backups, that they are making test restores, but they never really need to restore data on the production environment because of the incident. But if the incident happens of any kind, of any sorts, and we need to restore the data, this is when we think, do I have the backup? Is my backup working? Is my backup complete? So this is important consideration. This is the topic that we neglect until we actually need it. And very often when I see companies approaching us wanting to speak about backup, this is typically coming from two triggers. The first one, they went through audit, for example, preparing for DORA, and audit pointed out, guys, you're not backing up all your systems. You're not backing up your Jira, and they want to do it simply to meet the compliance requirements. Or the second case, which is much more sad for those companies, they just had an incident. They realized they don't have a backup to help them. So now, after, as a lesson learned from the incident, they decided, okay, this is right time to get backup implemented, not to have the same problem in the future. And a very important question that companies ask typically is, okay, what is actually happening behind the curtains of Atlassian in terms of actively protecting my data, like how Atlassian is protecting my data nowadays. And of course, Atlassian has lots and lots of great tools to make backups of their data on the infrastructure level. And in case of any large scale security incident happening, like the one that happened in 2022, Atlassian is ready to help you. Atlassian is ready to assist you. But the question is, what will happen in a case of small scale incident, like accidental data loss or low scale ransomware attack that made you lose just a part of your data? And the answer, the simple answer or oversimplified answer is nothing, which is not entirely true. Because as mentioned before, we have seen situations where Atlassian had major outages, which can happen for every SaaS platform. And this is also important to underline. The trend we see is that the more popular platform is among the users globally, the more incidents happen, because firstly, the platform itself is the bigger target for any malicious actors. And also, with the more features added every year, with the bigger usage, there is a bigger chance that a random thing that nobody can expect happen. So tons of SaaS platforms all around the world might experience some issue from time to time. The same can happen for Atlassian. And in case of those, Atlassian makes backup of your instances and is able to assist you. However, there are two things to keep in mind. The first one is Atlassian terms of service, which Atlassian is completely honest about, and I highly recommend all of you reading those. And they say that there are few exceptions to the backups that they make and how they can help you with them. For example, they can help you if you lose the whole instance as a part of some global incident, but if there is some mess up on your end coming from deleting the data by accident, deleting data by malicious actor, or deleting data as a result of overwriting them with some automation, they are not able to help you personally as this one particular company. Because for them to make use of their backup, they would have to restore on an infrastructure level. They would have to restore the whole server, the whole machine. They are not able, with this scale of a business, to restore just one your Jira workspace that you're working with. And this is also clearly stated in their shared responsibility model. And just to explain a little bit from a legal perspective here, shared responsibility model is actually something that you will see in every modern SaaS platform. No matter if you're using Jira, GitHub, Salesforce, or any other tool, they will have same clause, maybe with slightly different wording. And this clause says, we as a vendor take responsibility from delivering of our tool and making sure that our platform, our system is running properly. However, everything that you do in the platform as a user, including your user-made actions and the security of your data, is your responsibility. And this is something that's common across all the platforms. However, many people are not aware of it. So this is just something I would like to underline as something that you should look into, not only from perspective of Jira, but also from perspective of any other cloud SaaS platform that you are using. That probably in their terms of service, you will find clause which can be translated like this. And second thing to keep in mind, while Atlassian does its best to help the customers, if we are looking at large-scale incident like the one that happened in 2022, we will need to be aware that the wait time for Atlassian to come back to you and to help you in particular can be prolonged. In case of this 2022 incident that we all heard about, we helped lots of companies on an instant, but unfortunately there was a group of companies that had to wait up to 2 weeks to get their data brought back. And
actually, an interesting topic. Sorry to interrupt you. Have any of your customers actually experienced any data loss incidents?
yes,
So those things can happen, but like, do they really happen?
yes, they can happen. And actually, I have two stories like this that we can look at together. So the first story is something I call angry subcontractor story. This is actually the use case brought by a company from Germany, which is a startup working in the restaurant industry. They have been developing web application, and they hired a third-party subcontractor to work on the software development for them. And as part of their work, a subcontractor offered the company to set up automation between GitHub and Jira to write a custom app for the company to address very specific use case. The company was thrilled. They happily accepted the offer. Unfortunately, they made a rookie mistake, which is a common thing in startups, which was giving them too wide admin privileges to both systems, including Jira. A couple of months later, there is a dispute between the company and the subcontractor about the quality of subcontractor's work, and company decided to withhold the payment until subcontractor makes certain fixes. Subcontractor, who we can call malicious actor in this scenario, decided to abuse privileges that they got beforehand, and they cut off everybody on the company side from Jira and from GitHub. And as a result of this, the company experienced complete loss of access to source code of information and complete loss of access to their Jira, which in their case was both Jira software and Jira service management. So we can see here that, sometimes the recklessness and those rookie mistakes that every Jira admin makes from time to time, or being too much trustful to the subcontractor, can cost us quite a lot.
So you would say that when we take a look at disaster recovery, and you mentioned that before, we should not always take a look at IT first, but to the way we work with subcontractors, with other people, how we do risk management. So it's not just like how people are actually working within a tool, but everything around that. How do we train our people? How do we make sure that access is granted only to those people, like least privileged principle, right?
Yeah.
So that's also like a really good start, right?
Yeah. That's a great point you made, Jan, because we need to keep in mind, although the service outages can happen and they have an impact, they are just part of the risk. As we mentioned at the very beginning, right now, the number one threat which companies are least expecting are external threats such as ransomware attack, malicious actors. We have tons of problems on the side of humans, both on those accidental problems like granting somebody the wrong permissions, like making some issue with data upload, which we'll get to in a moment, because I have another story about problems with data upload. But we also have intentional human errors. Basically, we can have our angry, frustrated employee who is not thinking rationally, and we want to get back at the company. And we've seen scenarios like this. So really keep in mind, Atlassian does its best, and you probably do your best in keeping your data secure as a company using Jira, but you cannot be ready for everything. It's virtually impossible, because for 99 scenarios that you will predict, there's always one that you won't predict, and probably this one will happen.
Right. Now, there's, beside the Jira Cloud or the Atlassian Cloud products, there's still the chance, and it's, I think, the same with GitLab and GitHub, you can host your systems as well. Like you can have Jira Data Center on your own instances, maybe running in a cloud environment as well. But can I just back up the whole instance? And do I need a solution for that backup as well? So what's your take on all these other installation things as well?
That's a great question. So one of the most common questions I get when I'm talking with anybody about their disaster recovery plan is how quickly can we bring our data back? This is something that we measure with a metric called recovery time objective. And important thing that if you're hosting either with Jira Data Center or with any other solution when your data is kept at your own infrastructure, yes, you can make backup of the whole infrastructure. However, there is one problem. Restoring of the whole in such a scenario, if you have any problem, you need to restore the whole infrastructure at once, which is usable if we are talking about those the world is ending scenarios. Like we've lost majority of our data, we've lost 70% of our data due to outage, due to large-scale ransomware attack, and it's easier from us to start from a scratch rather than fix just a couple of issues. However, what we see most often nowadays is that people are still dealing with those low-impact scenarios, like, for example, having some data altered in a way they shouldn't be altered, or a couple of issues being deleted, or workflow being messed up. And in such a scenario, you cannot take advantage of backup done on the infrastructure level. It would be much healthier if the company would have possibility to make something we call granular recovery, which simply means restoring just particular objects from your Jira that you're interested in, particular project, particular issues, particular attachments, particular workflows. Like number one data loss incident, that if we can call it this way, that happens in Jira are corrupted attachments, which happen all the time, and every customer I speak with has experienced corrupted attachments beforehand. And number one scenario, if my attachments got corrupted, I want to bring only them back. I don't want to bring the whole infrastructure just to recover this screenshot from the customer that was sent a couple of weeks ago. Okay. So this is actually quite a good moment to drop in another story with the corrupted attachment specifically, but on completely different scale. The customer was company from United Kingdom, which was a massive legal company, and they have been using Jira Service Management. And as a result of, again, two wide permissions, a couple issues were deleted, just a few of them. And junior Jira admin has been tasked with restoring those attachments. Just to make a point here, obviously the attachments were deleted. They landed in the bin in Jira, so they are not deleted instantly. This is something that you should also be aware of. But before somebody realized that they have been deleted, they were already gone from the trash can in Jira. So once they realized that those tickets are lost, they decided to restore them, and they decided to do it using Jira native backup functionality. And as some of you might know by now, Atlassian is actually releasing soon the completely new backup and recovery functionality, native one. So lots of things will change. But for now, the only available option for restore using Atlassian's native feature is to restore over the whole workspace, which under the hood works in a way that Atlassian is deleting the whole workspace and is creating the new one from data from your backup, which is complete overkill if we are talking about the restore of just a few issues. So this is something to be mindful of. Pick the right tool for the task. For large-scale incidents, Jira is prepared, but for more of those day-to-day applications, where it's more of a challenge. Yeah. And what our junior Jira admin has done, they have started a restore process using this native feature, which basically means that they upload XML file with the database from Jira, and then they upload zip file with attachments. However, it turned out that the zip file with attachments got corrupted, and they could not have unpacked it. They could not upload it into Jira, and that was a problem because the half of the restore was already done. The data was restored, but attachments were not restored. And we got to the point that the company has lost 36,000 attachments. They have been running backups beforehand, not on a regular basis. So from all their backups, they managed to restore 12,000 attachments. However, 24,000 attachments were lost permanently. And this is something where not only, the two human errors caused us a large-scale data loss incident, but also this falls under what we've said beforehand. So in such a scenario, because the data loss happened due to the user overreading data, Atlassian is not able to help them in this particular scenario. Because they are not going to restore the whole instance just for one customer who made silly mistake, which is completely understandable, and this is common practice in the SaaS industry overall. That's why it's so important to have even if you're using Jira native backup feature, to have an alternative. And Atlassian is actually recommending to have third-party backup solution in place and not to rely completely on what they have in store, because it's great, but only for one particular use case. Okay, so obviously we come here to a question, so how we can protect our Atlassian ecosystem, how we can protect our data. And of course, as Jan already mentioned, there are many ways in which we can prevent those incidents from happening at all. We can restrict our permissions. We have the minimum privilege permissions policy in our company. We can have tons of great security features. We can have regular audits and everything. But as mentioned before, you can be prepared for 99 different scenarios, and there is always a chance that there will be one new scenario that you don't expect, especially with ransomware attacks being the #1 risk right now, because ransomware attacks are not focused on finding the problems in the platform as it exists right now, but they are scouting from the problems that might occur that nobody is expecting because they are related to things that are freshly added. So we don't even know yet what they might discover. They are hunting for those new vulnerabilities and relying on them. So this is something that you cannot even be prepared for because you don't know about those things. That's why I'm a huge fan of backups. Not only because I work in the backup industry, but also because I use them personally in all the different parts of my life. Because even if everything else fails, the backup is still there to help you. Because even if everything goes to ground, even if you lost all your data, even if your Jira instance is down, whatever happens with the backup and disaster recovery strategy, you can get back online. And of course, you can say, I don't need Jira backup, because even if such incidents happen, they don't have a long-term impact on the companies. And also, Greg, you mentioned that there is this Jira native functionality. I can use it. Why do I need something specifically for backups? And both of those points might be valid, but they are not thinking about the long-term implications. Because firstly, when we look at the companies that experience large-scale data loss incidents, they are typically shutting down within 5 years. Of course, this is not always the direct result of the incident itself, but as we mentioned at the very beginning, the #1 implication of data loss incident is economic driver. You're losing the money. You stop making the money. Maybe because of the data loss incident, project that was important for your company haven't been finished successfully. Maybe the customer was disappointed and they haven't signed another contract with you. Maybe employees got frustrated. So such things have long-term impact that you cannot predict because it impacts the financial side of your business, your profitability, your efficiency, in some scenarios, cash flow, which can have the long-term impact on the economic growth of the business.
So that's actually a really interesting point, is this cost benefit analysis, right? So how are organizations balancing the costs of the comprehensive data recovery, disaster recovery tools against the potential risk? And also, what metrics are useful for measuring the ROI, for example, of the DR investments? Can you maybe elaborate on that?
Okay, so in terms of measuring the ROI for the business, to actually know it, we need to have kind of working on the actual scenario. And this is actually something that many companies do as part of their security audit. So let's firstly list all the systems that are critical for our business that we are not in 100% control of. Jira is the fine example of it. And then you can ask yourself, how many people are dependent on Jira in their day-to-day work? For how long are they able to operate without access to this tool? After what time they are not able to continue? After what time we need to find for them replacement tools, which can also be additionally cost for the business? If we are not able to access this tool, how does it impact their efficiency? For example, we have our support team using Jira Service Management, and we see that we are doing, let's say, 150 tickets per one support specialist per day for 100 tickets. Okay, if we force them to switch to a backup system or just handling the tickets by email, how it will impact their efficiency in terms of tickets replied, how it will impact their efficiency in terms of closed tickets completely, how many tickets will slip through the gaps because we don't have the great monitoring of those tickets that Jira gives us. So those are the things that we need to ask ourselves and kind of be this, we need to think about worst possible scenarios. And then once you ask leaders of particular teams to think about it and think a little bit about outside of the box for it, we can actually see that, okay, if we force people to switch from Jira to emails out of a sudden, and they have no right monitoring for tickets, we need to reassign 3 people to tickets distribution, which will mean that we have 3 less people for solving tickets, which means that our team count drops, let's say, from 8 people to 5 people. And without proper monitoring, people are resolving not 100 tickets per day, but 60 tickets per day. And okay, then we look, okay, how does it actually impact our SLA for response time for the team? Is this going to incur any penalty for us from the customers in terms of not keeping our SLA, etc.? And this is one quite complex scenario just for one particular use case. That's why it's good to have this exercise done across all the different impacted teams, but you will also very quickly see that even the impact on one team can probably be compared to the cost of having backup solution in place. And that nicely ties with the topic of having the whole backup procedure fully automated, because Jira's native functionality is manual backup. You need to actually physically have somebody log into Jira every 2 days and make export of the data. And let's face it, if we are forced to do something manually every 2 days, there is a chance that we'll forget about it, that we won't do it on schedule. And then regularity of our backups is also impacted as well. Having it automated can save you up to 30% in the data management cost, meaning that, okay, you have some cost of the backup system, you have some cost of somebody who helps you implement this backup system, like a solution, like Atlassian solution partner. But then after you incur this cost, you don't have day-to-day maintenance cost of it. Your biggest cost will be testing your backups, which you can do once per quarter, once every 6 months, whatever suits you best.
Yeah.
So this is also another thing to think about. Implementing backup is not that difficult. And even if I could make a wish,
Go for it.
that one
Christmas is
thing,
coming.
Christmas is coming. That one thing happens after our webinar today. Jira admin, please go to your Jira and make this old school manual backup. Just do it. Do it today if you can, if you haven't done it within the past 48 hours. Because, okay, you can go high tech and bring fully automated backup solution to help you save the time and be prepared for every possible disaster recovery scenario that can happen. But even if you start with baby steps, which is doing manual backup once per week, it's still improvement to the fact that many people don't make backups at all.
Awesome. So I just figured that my camera died.
Oh,
but you can go ahead.
okay. Okay. And also be mindful of one thing. While it's great if you start with those manual backups done from Jira, and it's easy to actually make this backup, please be mindful that it's not a complete backup. It won't contain all of your data because it's widened to just what is supported by the export feature of Jira. And also all your attachments, avatars, and logs can only be exported every 48 hours, which effectively means that you can have full backup with up-to-date data of everything that matters only every 48 hours. So it's good place to start from if you want to have backup at all, but it's not as comprehensive as the backup can get. And we can actually get to what actually makes a good backup solution. What are the things, like if you think about, oh boy, Greg scared me a lot, what should I consider when thinking about implementing proper backup in place? We'll get to this part right now. And there is actually 4 pillars of such a backup solution, 4 things that you should consider. The first one, the obvious one, is the data coverage. So you want to be able to back up as much data as possible. So you want to go beyond just the core information like projects, issues, attached workflows, but you also want to have all of your attachments up to date. You want to have your automations backed up. You want to have your assets backed up. You want to have history of changes backed up, all the configuration, permissions, etc. So your backup preferably should go as deep as possible in getting all the data. And this is actually a good exercise for you as Jira admins to ask ourselves, okay, what data loss will be most impactful for us, and loss of what data doesn't actually matter that much. Because in many cases, when we've done this exercise with our customers, we realize that actually, because typically people say we want to restore all the projects as soon as possible. But later on, if we really go into it, they say, okay, restoring all the projects is not that crucial. Like, there are some couple projects that keep our business running, but some other projects can wait. However, automations that we've configured in Jira are a must-have, because without them, people will not know how to do half of the things with Jira and with all the other tools that we have integrated with Jira as well. Another pillar, restore. So backup is only as good as restore strategy. Because let's face it, a little bit of trade secrets. Fetching data from Jira, if you are knowledgeable with API and how API works, is not a rocket science. Like, a scalable developer can probably create application that can fetch data from Jira one way or another. However, problem starts when you want to actually restore those data. And typically, when we think about restoring the data, we are only thinking about one basic scenario. I have my Jira instance. I lost the whole Jira instance at once, and I want to bring it back.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, this is scenario which is viable. It can happen, but it's more of a scenario that can happen for situations when we have this fire, we have a flood, we have ransomware attack that impacted the whole infrastructure. In many cases, you'll be interested in restoring just part of your data. This is where you should have backup solution in place that allows you making granular restore.
Mm-hmm.
So picking only the information that are crucial for you and starting with restoring them. This also allows you to improve your restore time, because if the company tells you we can survive a day without those 5 projects, but company cannot operate without this one project because our whole, support team depends on it.
Mm-hmm.
In such a scenario, you should take advantage of granular restore. First restore this mission critical project, and then think about everything else. Another thing that also also important to know. It may happen sometimes that Atlassian is experiencing some problems in one region while other region is perfectly fine. So sometimes you should be also prepared to make restore of your data between different Jira accounts. For example, be able to create account in different region, restore data into it, and continue working there.
Yep.
Also, possibility to switch to on-prem. I have plenty of customers who have Jira DC instance that they are not using on a daily basis, but in an event of any large-scale incident, they are able to take their data from Jira Cloud and restore it to Jira DC and continue working there. And
which is actually funny. We some advertisement here. We do actually have a script that turns the zip file you get from the Atlassian cloud into a working data center instance. So it changes a bit the structure in the background, and then you can run it perfectly on a Postgres database, which is pretty cool, actually.
Yeah,
So
and that's
in that case, I've seen one company or one guy talking about some DORA requirements that you actually need a hot standby. So when something happens, that you can really restore something and you can just move on working in your preferred environment, which is a really interesting case.
Yeah, and exactly for scenarios like this, you should have possibility to restore data from deployment to deployment, from account to account, etc. Like, for example, in this case of this angry subcontractor case study with the company that was cut off from Jira, what they actually happened, they created new Jira account and they just restored data from the backup into the completely new Jira account. They invited only the people that they trusted, and they were able to continue working there without any disruption because they had backup in place and because they were able to restore to another instance, to another workspace, but also important, restore to another workspace while picking which users they want to restore and which not, which is also crucial if you have a scenario when there is a malicious actor in your workspace, or you don't know who you can trust in your workspace. Yeah. And also another useful thing, point in time restore. So not being dependent on restoring data from just the latest copy you made, by having the full history of backups you've made and being able to pick some information from another backup and restore just the part of it. Like in the corrupted attachments case study, the company was actually taking advantage of a previously done backups, and they were kind of putting them together to restore as much attachments as possible. And they managed to restore 12,000 attachments with it, which is also another great use case. So having proper backup is not about fetching the data, it's about being able to restore in a way that no matter what life throws at you, you are able to take advantage of your backup.
Mm-hmm.
Two also quick things to mention. storage of your backups. Because in many cases, when we've done a backup, we keep it on our lockup drive, or we put to our cloud, like to our SharePoint or our OneDrive or our Google Drive. This is not sufficient. And also, I believe that a password protected zip file is not an encryption. So think about, yeah, true. So think about how your data are protected in the backup that you are keeping, because number one target for attackers in case of ransomware attack, especially targeted ransomware attack, won't be just your operational infrastructure, but first they will hit your storage when you keep your backups, or they will try to hit it, and then they will cut you off from your production infrastructure. So important thing is to make sure that your backup storage is as secure as possible with highest level encryption. And also one thing I recommend, which is kind of a thing which is also neglected typically with rookies in the backup game, is storage replication. So keeping your backups in more than one location. Don't keep your backups in just one place. Keep them in multiple places at once. Even if one place gets compromised, you can still restore your data from another. Switch between different cloud vendors. Keep one backup in cloud, another one on-prem. Those are the things that can be automated as well if you have a right solution in place. And last but not least, especially thinking about DORA coming in, testing your backups. So you shouldn't be only taking for granted that if you've done your backup, it works as expected. You should have some sort of monitoring in place that lets you know that the process of fetching data from Jira was successful. There wasn't any disruption. There wasn't any connectivity issue. There wasn't any problem with permissions on the Jira side, and you are able to fetch your data completely. And you should also be able to make test restores. So be able to take your backup and restore either the whole workspace or just some data sample in a way that you can make sure that your backup is working as expected and meets your requirements, and you can present it to an auditor because this will be a requirement as a part of DORA, that you need to be able to test your backups without any disruption to your production environment.
So with the Atlassian cloud, let's take Jira, would it be possible to test that on a sandbox environment?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's one thing we actually recommend, to make restores to the sandbox and take advantage of it, because this is something that Atlassian, I love how Atlassian gives everybody a sandbox, and you should definitely do it. I highly don't recommend testing on production, because the best possible scenario is that lots of people will get lots of unexpected notifications that will make them go crazy.
Okay. Yeah. Turn the notifications off.
Yeah. And last but not least, just to kind of give you a signal about something, the good backup can be also measured with two metrics, one of which I already mentioned briefly: recovery time objective, so how quickly you can restore your data, and recovery point objective. Recovery point objective is basically how many hours worth of data we can lose yet remain operational. This is the metric that you also need to discuss with your stakeholders internally. Like, if we lose 1 day worth of work of our developers, or 1 day worth of work of our service management team, is it something we can afford or not? Can we afford losing 2 days worth of data, etc.? Why is this important? Because this will define how often you should be running your backups. And if you get an answer telling you that 2 days data loss is not acceptable for your organization, probably Jira native backup feature won't be sufficient, because you need to have backups done more often than every 2 hours, than every 2 days. So that's just one thing to underline. Okay, Jan, I think from my side that will be it. Do you have any questions for me, or any final points?
I think I got all my questions answered. Thank you very much, Greg, for that. If you guys are out there, are interested in talking more about that, just feel free to scan the QR code if you want to learn about where can we start, how can we make sure that we train our people right, so that it's part of the HR, let's say. If you want to know about how do we measure the ROI, right? Is it really worth it to do that? How closely should disaster recovery be integrated with cybersecurity and the incident response plan, and all those kind of things? So make sure you hit somewhere the QR code. And if you want to know more about GitProtect, you can scan that code as well. And you will find some information about the Jira backup solution they have. And obviously you can call Greg or write him